right, we're back for the afternoon sessions here at Startup Asia Jakarta 2014. How's everyone doing? All right, exactly the response I was looking for. I know you've had a big lunch from 2 rooms of food and buffet like crazy, but we're going to keep it lively, we're going to keep it going. We're going to continue talking about e-commerce here in Indonesia. I made a joke earlier that there's a lot of e-commerce sites coming online, and then because of the bad traffic, how are you going to get their products? Still got a problem there. So in this fireside chat, we're going to sit down with Paul Zerverkel, the group CEO of aCommerce, not e-commerce, aCommerce, and we're going to have Gwen come back and interview him. So put your hands together and welcome up to the stage.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone, again. So in the past 7 years, Paul has raised over 30 million for various kinds of investors. He also started and exited 3 of his past internet ventures in Asia at a cumulative value of over US dollars 100 million. So while the past ventures of yours have been mostly in advertising, and Sogo was e-commerce / advertising-ish, your latest forays have been to the logistics, infrastructure for e-commerce, so aCommerce. So my first question for you, Paul, is this. As a serial entrepreneur, what motivates you?
I think what motivates me is just the opportunity in the market, right? So when you see that there's so many problems to fix, it's not just the logistics, right? It's payments, even marketing and online advertising. There's still a lot of things that are broken. I would say in all our markets. So if you look at the past businesses that we've done, it's actually all very related. When you look at kind of this big funnel, on the very top you have content and media. In the middle you have advertising, and at the bottom of that funnel you have e-commerce, right? And all the past businesses we've built, we've been really able to look at what is the value of media and advertising, right? Whether you look at content marketing, search, all the way to even the creatives of a banner ad, but what does that mean in terms of sales to a brand and to a company? So when you look at e-commerce, a lot of people think it's just like shopping cart and payments, but it actually goes all the way up to the top, meaning to content. And this is where, I think that when you see all the big players out there in the market, the Alibabas and the Amazons, they're very aggressive at going into the, the media and the content and the streaming. And it's really, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to not use Facebook and Google for customer acquisition, right? How do I start to actually look all the way up and building my own media, my own customer acquisition, demand generation funnel? So in our past, all the past startups we've done, they were very media, advertising, and commerce. But one thing that we realized when we were building e-commerce in Southeast Asia, in the Sogo business, we saw that fulfillment was a big problem, right? So in Sogo kind of leapfrog e-commerce 1.0. You went straight into the voucher model where you bought a voucher, download, go to the store. No delivery, no logistics, etc. So when we saw that if we fix this logistics problem, e-commerce is going to grow, e-commerce grows, online advertising will grow, right? So we're really looking at how do we start to fix the entire ecosystem, right? And it really stems down to a problem of logistics. And I really wish that we didn't have to go fix the problem. Why do we have to go into, reinventing how a fulfillment center or warehouse is done? But we have to, because the guys out here aren't doing all that, right? We actually have to also go down now to delivery, doing COD, because the delivery guys didn't want to do COD. So these are, as an entrepreneur, it gets you excited, especially in the current model that we're in, right? That every corner we turn around, every rock we pick up, there's another problem that needs to be fixed, and that's kind of cool. It's exciting, I would say, to always, because a problem for us is basically revenue opportunities and value and hence opportunity.
But when you started AdMax and New Media those many years ago, did you already see this coming? Not yet. It was just purely advertising content related back then.
No, yes. we didn't see e-commerce coming, but what we did see was, where do we drive all this demand generation to? right? And we used to drive it to filling out a form, right? Or unique visits, you know what I mean? And we kept thinking like it was such a waste, right? You have all this traffic, you know, going to websites, etc. You know, how do you start to drive them offline? And that's when when we saw the Insogo business model or the Groupon model, we were like, wow, you know, that was the answer. That was the holy grail. But when we're in the advertising space, you're just doing all about conversions, right? How much, like the time people spent on the website, the brand, a lot of the fluffy stuff. But now, the maturity of the internet is forcing every brand to go, if I'm going to spend this much on marketing, how much sales am I going to generate? And you know that you're going to see this massive shift towards that. You know, and all the advertising agencies now are starting to basically wake up to that problem.
How do you make the jump from Insogo to Arden and then aCommerce?
So from Insogo or from the other businesses, when we exited, you know, you know, you kind of your typical thing, right? You want to put money into a fund and you want to start doing investments, you know, as an entrepreneur. But when we were doing that in Arden, we wanted to invest into e-commerce. And as we looked at all these companies that we were investing into, they all had the same problem. They all said, hey, you know, we need millions of dollars to do our own logistics, right? And you're like, well, you know, we also saw that in Insogo as well, which was you were outsourcing to all these 3PLs that were doing a really bad job in their B2B fulfillment centers. They weren't geared towards B2C, right? So you know, when we saw that problem from not only Insogo, but also from the investment side in Ardent, we realized that, hey, you know, talking to all the my other business partners, like we're builders, right? We built 3 companies before. I think we need to go into building another mega one, right? Because the ecosystem really needs this, right? So you know, and also I'll be honest, you know, from an investor side, I wasn't happy really in the VC. I loved building, right? So you know, as much as I think it's very valuable to invest. And you know, and believe in other entrepreneurs. You know, my passion is in building. So you know, I love. And then now this time around, you know, we had bigger ambitions to build a harder project, a bigger project. And when I talk about project, I mean, you know, when you build something, let's say of what we're building, you know, you're not paying $5,000 or $3,000, $5,000 a month salaries. Right? If you're going to go hire heavyweights from consulting firms, from the Amazons, Rocket, and etc., you have to pay top dollar, right? So if you're going to pay top dollar, you better have a big problem to fix. You know what I mean? So you know, big problems require, you know, big capital, and it's really fun to be able to, you know, now look at, you know, actually building kind of infrastructure stuff.
Talking about capital, how much have you raised for aCommerce?
So far, we've raised a total of 10.7. And you know, for us, it's, you know, until 2015, but we're probably going to be raising a Series B in mid next year. And the reason is, you know, we have some bold ambitions to accelerate much faster. I mean, it literally week on week. And I can't go into too much detail, but the companies that approach us, whether they're mega investors or they are big corporate firms that are coming in, you know what I mean, and the ones that you see in the news, like you start to realize that, like, we need to build a bigger moat fast, right? We need to accelerate faster, right? But even our revenues, doubled in the last 3 months, right? So we're all of a sudden having to realize that, hey, you know, if this is going to start to go into that hockey stick growth, right, we better be prepared, right? So, you know, it's exciting for sure, but it's not just going to be obviously our company. I think it's going to be, you know, the whole group here, right? The whole market is going to benefit from all of this.
And your 10.7 was from Sinamas, a big Indonesian conglomerate. Are you looking to replicate that across the different countries?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So the great thing for us about Sinamas was that, you know, we were able to find a local partner that could actually help us solve local problems, right? I mean, I'm not going to get to, like, you know, custom clearance. Warehousing here is ridiculously expensive compared to the other markets, right? And Sinamas, you know, has a lot of land. right? And also, some fulfillment, acres of fulfillment centers. So it was very strategic for us to actually find a really strong local partner, especially for one of the biggest markets in the region, right? And for us to really scale, right? And we're not talking about owning hard assets, like warehousing, but we're considering, right? Because, if we're gonna build a mega fulfillment center, out here, that is the idea of, when you see a wave coming, you want to be prepared. And when you're a big e-commerce company and you come out here and you look for fulfillment centers and, where's my e-commerce infrastructure support? It's like, good luck. You probably have to build it all yourself. So, if we're ahead and we know, the wave is coming, we definitely want to, catch up, preempt that.
So do you already have potential partners in the pipeline for the few other countries in Southeast Asia?
Yes, we're definitely in discussions with, basically strategic partners in each of the countries. And each partner it's completely different. But for us, what was really interesting from a Cinemas perspective was, even though they may seem like a big corporate, they're also very financial savvy and they're good investors. But and so we hope that we can potentially find similar partners at that caliber in the other markets.
So what do you really think of Alibaba's investment, $250 investment into SingPost, your other competitor?
For me, I think that's great for the ecosystem, right? So, a lot of people will say, oh, SingPost, your biggest competitor. We actually, we want to work with SingPost to help them with, to help cover the markets that we're not in. We have clients that want to ship products to China, to rest of the world, to other markets, right? Meaning, Philippines to Singapore, Singapore to Malaysia. And so we're not freight forwarding. Right? We don't do freight forwarding, meaning big B2B container to container, right? So we want to find partners. So if we can find a partner like SingPost that can do that for us, right? We'd be happy to. Obviously, we're going to do that with them. Then maybe they can help us and work with us in the local markets. We're very, very local. So SingPost is building big distribution centers in Singapore where they do drop ship to the rest of the countries. And yes, they actually, they have investments in the other markets. In our markets, but I would say they're not as granular and not as local. But I think we can find a way to definitely work with them. And with Alibaba putting in money into SingPost, it's just the beginning. Alibaba in China puts actually investment into 5 companies that all compete against each other, right? So that's just the nature of, I think, of Chinese investors. Like it's hedging, right? So I think it's just the early days. It's just the beginning. But but then there's no Alibaba, there's the Amazons, there's the eBays, there's the Rocket Internet. So I think that what's really interesting about our markets is there's so many players, and that fragmentation of players, whether it's Tokopedia, Lazada, Zalora, Amazon, Ali, Express, Elavenia, all these are marketplaces. Line, right? Tons of marketplaces, and it's an opportunity for us because a company just goes, man, I have to manage all these marketplaces. I have to API, inventory management on all these places. Like I need help, right? So the more fragmented our market gets, whether it's from the marketplace or from the 3PLs or from the delivery, we look at ourselves as middleware. A lot of people think we're like logistics, right? We had to build logistics services, right? Because in these markets, you can't just build product or build tech. Right? You actually have to have that service layer on top of it. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people, oh, you're just service-based business. No, actually, we actually approach everything in what we call manualization first, where you actually sort out, going, okay, here's the entire value, the whole value chain, supply chain. What products can we build that can really scale in terms of tech, right? So every startup, I think, should think that way, or every tech company at least should think that way.
So you downsized in Singapore. How did you make a decision, and how difficult was it? How did you make that decision?
It's just, it was tough, to be honest with you, because, we just raised funding, but you actually, you have to make smart business decisions, and you got to know where to basically allocate your resources, right? So when you look at just the upside and opportunity in Singapore versus the market that you had, right, and the market share that you would win, right? Singapore, I guess to put it in a different perspective, when you talk to brands there and you say, hey, go online in e-commerce, like Procter & Gamble, let's say, versus Unilever, what's really interesting is they said, if I put all this money into e-commerce, I will win 1% market share in Singapore because we've already hit the cap, right? So people are already so happy with the ceiling, you know what I mean? They don't want to actually spend more to actually win what? More, I spent $500 million, I win 2 percentage points from my competitor, right? So when you look at that very saturated, mature market, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it wasn't that hard of a decision to pull out, but it was really, you know, I felt bad because we made the call to test local fulfillment. We got a 200 square meter warehouse. You know, we rented, we got staff there because we made a guess and a gamble that we said if we would win big brands in Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, for example, like HP or, you know, I mean, L'Oreal, I think we could also win the Singapore market, right? But we made a wrong judgment call, right? Because every company thinks differently for each market in the logistics game, in the e-commerce game. In advertising, different. You have advertising agencies regional, making advertising decisions, regional budgets, regional. So we always had this kind of top-down and bottom-up approach, sales approach. That's how we tackled, you know, Southeast Asia. But in our e-commerce space, it was so different. So meaning we didn't need local operations, regional sales marketing only, and it was very difficult. But we made sure that we would find all the guys a job, right? We made it our goal to find them all new jobs, and that happened in 2 days.
Where did it all go? To your competitors?
To all our clients.
Clients.
Yeah, to all our clients who wanted them, needed them. But, you know, so it was really cool. I mean, you know, we were offering to do all the, you know, resumes and et cetera for them, but it happened really quick.
So how many people do you have to lay off from that downsizing?
I mean, around 17, 18 people.
And over all your internet ventures, how many people had you have to lay off?
In the AdMax business, we overscaled. So when we raised $6 million from SoftBank then, you know, we were very gung-ho. We scaled to about 250. I ended up having to downsize 30%, right? So that was pretty tough. You know what I mean? And I think that was like, you know, startup 101, right? Like I mean, I was in my late 20s then, but, you know, that was really kind of the eye-opener, right? And that's what makes you, in some ways, like, you know, you're reluctant to be too aggressive because then you have to do the hard stuff, right? Which is, if you get too aggressive and you have to, you know, basically downsize, right? You know, some companies, they do it easily, but for me, you know, we want to spend a little bit more time thinking about how fast we scale just because of this. You know, I mean, of the challenges of potentially scaling back.
But if it's a binary choice between being too aggressive and less aggressive, which one will you pick?
Obviously be too aggressive, right? But be too aggressive, but you have to understand that the guys that work with you, right, and the way that you downsize companies, you know, you have to be honest. You're like, look, we read the market wrong. I know you know, yes, we raised 10 million in funding, but, you know, our investors are gonna look at, you know, each market, revenue per market, you know, I mean, cost, you know, in the P&L by market, and they're going, what are you doing here, right? That was a decision. So, you know, obviously you have to be very open and transparent, and that's what makes it very difficult, right? But, you know, but obviously over being aggressive, because, you know, you got to think, we're not competing with only local guys now, right? We're now competing with, you know, the local media and you know, the big corporations coming into our market. You're competing against the regional guys coming into our market, and then you're competing against the global guys coming into our market. What makes Southeast Asia so unique is that you have these kind of trifecta of going, you know, these three potential competitors, but then reverse it to the opportunity side. This is three potential tiers of acquirers, M&A, right? Investors, right? And with that, you know, if you're going to build a solid business, you know, you're going to get a really good bidding war.
I'm going to jump back to that later, but within your company, do you consider your employees, your staff, friends?
I mean, yes and no, because I think sometimes, you have to be definitely friendly, right? But it's also difficult when because you also have to evaluate them as well as, obviously their KPIs and et cetera, right? But I think it's a balancing act, right? Because, at the same time, who doesn't want to work with people that you want to have a drink with? But, and I think it's also very important that you set the goal and you set the strategy and you set the incentive structure, right? It's very straightforward, for a person when they come into your organization. what they need to do and where do we need to get to, right? So hopefully that sets it themselves, and and being friendly and in a nice environment, right? Like I think that's super important. The culture from day one is very important, right? Culture internally, right? It's how people can be able to voice their opinion, can actually, the delivery guy, right? Being able to say, hey, if I actually say, if he actually makes a comment on, how we should do COD differently, right? Is somebody listening to him, or the marketing person? You know what I mean? So I think that, the great thing about, I think, internet companies is that it's the whole business model of the internet is transparency. Right? Like now when you give stock options, right, or your salary, everyone can actually go online and figure out roughly what they actually should have, right? There's no kind of bullshitting anymore, right? So that's what I love about the just the internet business is the internet itself is all about transparency. So when a company isn't transparent, it's difficult.
So I'm going to take that point. It's very interesting. So US company Buffer, they make all their salaries transparent.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, that's different. That's a challenge. Also, I mean, I wouldn't go to that level, but maybe it's not. Maybe eventually it will get to that stage, right? But I think it's when in a very mature job and employment market and HR, like it's just recruitment, and in the U.S., like you have I think Glassdoor, you have all these like really interesting sites that already show a lot of transparency. Right, so I think it will eventually potentially get to that, but at this stage, I think we're still early.
So regarding team again, how many people do you have across the region?
Probably by December, we're gonna have 300.
And all these people, how are they distributed in terms of countries?
So majority is Thailand and Indonesia, and Indonesia over 100, Thailand basically over 100, around 100, 160, Philippines 25, 30. Philippines we just started. But I mean, the great thing about our model is that, the brands that we work with are asking us to please, like, expand quicker into Vietnam and Malaysia. We want you to, we want to go in there, right? So, that's again one of the reasons why we're gonna have to raise funding probably sooner than later. But it's a good problem.
In terms of markets, which have been the easiest and which have been the toughest?
I mean, I think all markets are very tough. Right? I mean, obviously from just setting up a company in Singapore, but you fight a different war in Singapore, right? Like, you have the taco bins, the Singpost and all, etc. And everyone, yeah, and everyone has, obviously recruiting as well, right? Hats off to the Rocket Internet guys for creating the e-commerce university. Excuse me, e-commerce university. Because, I think that was very valuable for our ecosystem. And, we also hire people from, obviously, Rocket, but now, I mean, from each, when you look at each market, it's just, you cannot kind of you don't have a blanket approach. It's, you work with, the local team, like, Hadi Wenas, and Adrian Zaherman here, they're actually telling us what to do in Indonesia, and then they're going, hey, maybe you should do that in Philippines, right? And so we we're not, we don't look we don't really look at regional, right? The regional is basically going, what can we learn from Indonesia? And when we go into Vietnam and in Malaysia, probably a lot of the learnings are going to come from Indonesia as well as also Thailand, but Indonesia especially, because as we start to roll out in each market, we're learning, the model evolves much quicker, right?
What do you think of the urban crowdsourced logistics industry, things like GoGoVan and EasyVan?
Yeah, I mean, that can be very disruptive, I think, potentially. But I mean, at the same time, you want to look at every company that could potentially disrupt you, right? So when we look at the GoGoVans, we actually, we're not building that model, but in some ways we have a very similar model in that we work with a variety of 3PLs. Rather than one van, we'll work with small companies with bundles of fulfillment. But that you at least get the quality control. You know what I mean? And the I guess the guaranteed fulfillment, the SLA, right? The service level agreements that come with that, and obviously penalties and fines if they don't deliver, etc. Right? So the crowdsourcing model, I think, to be honest with you, that's anything that's being outsourced. The word outsource, right, is going to be disrupted by crowdsource, right? Matter of time, it's more of a matter of time of when, but you have to always consider that, you know what I mean? And so we look at that technology and we look at how do we apply that into the B2B space, you know what I mean? And so that's how we look at it. But once it becomes more disruptive, we could actually work with them to actually outsource some of our delivery as well, and that might make a lot of sense.
Have you started talking to them?
No, not yet. None of them have come to our markets. They're just starting to, right? But the challenge is that we have really demanding clients that want guaranteed delivery times and etc. And at the moment, just to fulfill that need, right? Don't get me wrong. Next year we would love to start to experiment with that, right? And take some of that, basically orders and test it out with crowdsourcing. But it'll probably be a different kind of client, right? That's more that's more price conscious and that's willing to actually take a lower level service level agreement.
Do you have an example of that?
Sorry?
Example of a company like that?
Just small startups, right? Startups that basically go, hey, I'll rather take a lower price, for you to use this, delivery courier, this crowdsourced delivery courier versus, you know what I mean? But one advantage, I would say, that when you look at crowdsourcing is the APIs, right? A lot of the 3PLs out here, the delivery companies, they don't have APIs that you can actually go, hey, where's my package? Is it going from this city to this city? You know what I mean? Like, has it signed yet? Where is it along the whole, kind of delivery route, right? And you don't get that right now with the 3PLs. You kind of get it like a day later going, okay, it was delivered, right? So the good thing I think about crowdsourcing is you have that real-time API back that goes, okay, where is it? But I mean, I think that it's still early days, right? So we don't want to experiment too much with unproven technology yet. We want to be like second or third, once they prove it out.
So how fast is the delivery now? Because Enchanto wants to, says that their goal is to deliver anything in 99 minutes. What's yours?
I mean, there's some clients, there's some products that want 99 minutes, right? I mean, for us, it's like, the 4 hour, we do some of our deliveries within 4 to 8 hours. Right? The harder thing for us to deal with more is like the flash logistics, right? So when you look at basically new platforms coming into the market like Line, right? Or even just imagine like a Lazada like flash sale, right? But even that you can deliver in, let's say, 2 days and etc. But some companies going 10,000 orders in 1 day, right? And your fulfillment center has to be able to process that many orders quickly, right? And the demand is so big, right? So you look in all these brands now in mobile platforms selling, doing M-commerce, right? Their sites are crashing. Why? Because, Line basically has just this massive demand generation, right? Then they go, okay, here's 13 million users, in one deal, in one sale, right? And in one of the telco companies that we're helping manage in e-commerce. And you're talking about $20,000 in hosting fees to support these spikes alone, right? I mean, obviously AWS, but these guys actually, you have to scale for that. So if the demand generation is at that scale, right, and there will be more coming, Facebook, Twitter, all the mobile guys, who's doing that level of demand fulfillment, right? So we're more worried about that level of scale to deliver within 1 to 2 days versus speed, right? And you got to choose which battle you want to fight, right? But when you look at speed as in next day delivery, same day delivery, I mean, a lot of it is great propaganda, marketing, right? Because it's just, when people actually see going, I can get it today. I mean, you look at the data and the stats and, the Amazon and all these guys that are doing it, not that many people actually choose that option. They actually choose next day, right? Because, it comes with a premium. And, some people are going, whoa, is the guy going to come in like right now? You know what I mean? Like, am I prepared? So, and I think that it's still, to be proven. But without a doubt, once that trend starts to hit, you have to be prepared. You have to be ready.
So back to the acquisition targets part. Are you looking to acquire anyone?
I mean, that's always, you always have to have that in your game plan, right? Our game plan, for us is, when you look at, how do you build a mega brand and a mega company, right? I mean, everyone says IPO, but why IPO, right? It's because, we want to be a really strong, regional brand, regional company, 5 years, and ideally we could have stock that we could help, actually companies that want to exit through us, right? So whether they're advertising, marketing, demand generation, more, let's just say, transaction focused, all the way down to, logistics, some distressed assets, acqui-hires, whatever. We want to have stock that people actually would want to own. They would want to join our business to build something bigger and grander. So, for us, our vision is to build that stock, to build that brand, right? And want to focus on that. Right now, and along the way, if we could make some acquisitions that make a lot of sense for us as we expand into new markets, we're definitely looking at that, right? And our management team and our group, along with our advisors, our investors, right? We're going, okay, how do we think bigger now, right? And so we had people coming in, and we're just talking to them about what are the requirements to IPO. So we can start working backwards on a 2015 business plan to just go very aggressive. If we need to go IPO in 3 years or in 2 years, what is the revenue and the profit that we have to generate?
So what if, like, for example, the bigger companies are coming in, just now you mentioned, and they would be your potential acquirers. What amount will make you happy?
What amount? It's very difficult to actually answer that now. It's more like, and it's never an amount also. And when you get acquired, it's also you're earning out, right? And you get a combination of shares, right? You're going to be part of that company. So that company has to have that big vision, also of which, like, if I own some stock in that company, like, I got to be motivated to build it out. So that company has to have a big vision, grand vision, right? And what can they do really for our local team? Are they going to basically lay off, like, half the company and put in their own? There's a lot of different circumstances, so, obviously, money, not only buying, the shareholders out, but also incentivizing the company ongoing, right? What do the current staff get, right? So there's a lot of negotiations that happen in an acquisition, and that's why and it also moves as the company is scaling, like, aggressively, like, month on month, right? It changes differently, and you also have different valuations based on who are all the other bidders. Right, so it really, to be honest, it depends, right? But it's something that you always should consider because like, your investors want to know that, your shareholders want to know that, and if you're not gonna even consider or explore that, it's kind of very naive of you.
For your previous 3 exits, did you consciously plan that? Did you make people bid for you?
No, I think you always try to plan to be self-sustaining. Right? If you plan to go in an exit and you don't get it, then there's that cliff. Then you're like, okay, like crap, right? Like, now what, right? So I think you have to have that long goal, that vision, right? And you have to march towards that, right? Hitting A, B, C, right? And you have to have that, that end goal, right? So along the way, it just so happens that every time we get to try to raise a mega round in our other startups, guys are going, hey, we don't want to compete against you. We would rather acquire you, And so that's, and then we open that up to our team, our staff, our investors, and et cetera, and, and then the decision is made, right? But again, you want to, if you're going to go down that stage, you want to explore actually a lot of options.
So last 2 questions. Even though you downsized in Singapore, you told Tech in Asia that you're working on something new for Singapore.
Yeah.
You did tell us that.
Yes, I can't really disclose that at the moment, but the whole thing is, I can't really disclose that. So
is it more of an investment or startup? More of a builder or investment?
It's definitely with another entrepreneur, right? But it's using basically our assets that we had in aCommerce that we weren't using anymore. So that's all I could really tell you. Like, it requires very similar assets to what we had, right?
When are you looking to launch that? Make it the public?
It should be it should be public in December.
That's in 1 week.
Yeah.
You can tell us now.
Yeah, in mid-December. In mid-December.
Yeah. Okay, so last question for you, Paul. What is your overall thesis in life?
For me, I think, you just have to like what you do, to love what you do, right? That's important because if you don't like what you do, you're not going to be good at it. And right now, like, when you look at the how the world works, right? It's it's so competitive, right? You got to grab your niche, And in order to grab your niche, what are you good at, right? Like, what do you also have to really look at what is your real strengths and capabilities, and actually think of yourself as if you were your own employee, where would you put yourself, right? And I look at that as, I am, where am I best fit to be, to be in, right? And I mean, yes, you have your kind of like, I'm best fit today, but what I've learned also was that if you're not nervous, right? Like you have to actually be nervous to build value, right? A lot of people, it's so anti, I guess, human nature, right? Because we're all about trying to be comfortable, you know what I mean? Like, you want to be comfortable, and that's what life's all about, and etc. But in the business world, it's like, if I'm not sweating, I'm not nervous, right? Thank God I'm not like, waking up and my pillow is wet with tears because I'm so stressed, right? But I'm not at that level yet. But when people go to that level, they're building really valuable startups, right? Really valuable tech companies, right? And, you just look at people that, like when you realize you just, I guess compare yourself to what the other really heavyweights are doing. Like, I have a pretty easy life, but again, when you think about that, I think every entrepreneur or every person, life is too short. You want to be nervous about things because when no pain, kind of no gain in some sense. And for me, as I build more and more companies, like the pain threshold is starting to become like. I'm starting to like bigger pain, right? I don't mean to sound sadistic or anything, right? But yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.